Good morning and welcome back to All That to Say.
Wait, what if it's not morning?
Well, good day to you and welcome back to All That to Say.
That's right. All right, everybody. Welcome back. Nick, it's good to see you.
It's good to see you.
And if you can't see us, it's good to hear you.
It's good to hear you.
All right, hey, so I have kind of a serious thought I wanted to throw out on the table right off the bat. So,
Okay.
I was like,
it.
man, we'll be funny today. I was like, no, got some serious stuff. So I read this, I had this thought one day. I was thinking, I said, conversation without context leads to chaos. And what does that mean? So let me paint a scenario a little bit, and then I want to unpack it if we can. So a lot of times we have conversations with people where they're telling us information that involved other people or other scenarios or other situations or other things, right? And we often kind of like we can choose a side or we can get riled up. Our emotions or our decisions or our view of that conversation is a one-sided context.
Right.
And it can often lead to, and that chaos was offense, misunderstanding, wounding, hurt. Like there's these things that can happen when you don't understand the full context of the other part of the conversation that you're now getting the second part of the conversation or the third part of the conversation.
You're now starting to see all sides.
Right. You don't see all sides. And if there's anything I've learned over all my years is that there's always two sides of every story.
At least.
And there's an element of truth in both sides. And there's an element of a lie that's being believed on both sides.
Right. And part of that, I think, also is perception of like how people perceive their world.
100%.
Like if
the filter they have.
If you say to me, Nick, I didn't like the song you did on Sunday, depending on how I view the world, and I can take that as I don't like you and I don't like how you lead worship. Right.
Yeah.
Like seriously,
Yeah. No, seriously.
I could take that as I don't, or
it's a filter you have.
yeah, it's the filter. It's how you see the world and how you process. And like if you're looking to be wounded, I think too. Like if you're looking to be offended, like I've met people who, I think we all have,
absolutely,
who are looking to be offended or looking to be hurt and looking to play the victim.
Yes.
Almost.
Yes.
Everything bad happens to me.
Right. 100%.
Yeah, you're attracting that.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was the filter you operate.
Yeah, it's how you're looking at everything. Yeah. You have the power of life and death in your tongue. So speak life over yourself, and you're not a victim.
Right. I think that's really hard for people. I can think of so many times, Nick, where someone would come into the church for the first time, and then would leave, and then I would maybe run into them later. Maybe they wouldn't come back, right?
Right.
It's like, hey, everything. No one said hi to me. Or no one said I looked nice, or no one. And I think there's an element of a church, I don't care where you are.
You should make people feel, and you should make people feel valued.
Exactly. But I also know that, well, did you put yourself in a scenario where someone could talk to you?
Right. Did you come in 10 minutes late to service and then leave 5 minutes before?
Bingo.
And say, no one said hi to me.
That's it, right? Because worship is going on. You went straight to your seat, and no one wants to interrupt you.
Right.
And
or they're engaged in worship.
Exactly. And so, but I think that there's so many times I've where it's not just church, right? It's work. It's when I go work out, there's so many of these scenarios where I have someone talking to me and they're telling me something, and I'm like, I don't have the full context here.
Right.
You're telling me your side of the thing, or you're telling me you said your perspective, your filter is leading. you're not speaking life into the situation. You're definitely want me to get on your side. And I think that it's such a dangerous place to be, from the concept of that if we're supposed to be people that bring peace into situations, how do I want to say this? We're not the judge,
Right.
but we are supposed to help, like, judge between what's right and wrong and point people to right.
Right.
Right. And so we have to know the context in order to say to someone, hey, like, that's not the full truth.
Right. And I think that also, like, just changing how we talk as just not just a church, but as like people. I mean, in changing our perspective, like how we address situations is key to that. Like, instead of saying, this is what they did, this is how I felt I was spoken to. Or like even like in marriage, I mean, and that was something early on in our marriage that we had to change, because it was like, you did this
Right.
to me,
Right.
or you like said this to me, and I felt that you were disrespectful, or
Right.
you didn't care,
Right.
or but it's being clear. I think it's been clear that it's like, when you said that, this is how I felt. I felt rejected, or
Right.
I felt, I felt hurt because of this. And I think sometimes it's just about clarifying, like, our perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Through, like, this is why I see this in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, I felt rejected because of this. So because of that, this is how I reacted.
Yeah. Do you think, I mean, I think, I don't even think it's a question. I think it's more of a statement for myself, is that I think a lot of people actually don't fully understand their feelings.
Oh, I think that, one, men aren't supposed to have feelings.
Well, that's what they say, but they do.
But they do. We do.
Yep.
I think men aren't supposed to have feelings, and women are overly emotional, quote unquote.
Which is not always true.
Which is not always true.
Right.
And so there's a balance in understanding that we are wired differently,
Mm-hmm.
all of us.
Yep.
And how we process emotions is differently.
Yeah, that's not just male, female. That's like
like
all of us.
That's all of us.
Yeah.
I process things internally. I'm an internal processor. I have to think about things. I have to think about, like, I think about everything. I mean, I think about, like, what I'm going to wear tomorrow. Like, today, this morning, when I picked out my clothes for today, I'm thinking about what I'm wearing tomorrow.
Right.
Gotcha. But I'm an internal processor, and I want to think through things and, like, process, where my wife's like, I want to talk about everything. And so, like, but I'm like, hold on, tell me what you want to talk about.
Right.
And let me kind of catch up, because I think just knowing the differences in processing is so important as humans, like, to understand each other, that we all process differently.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Well, I think that not only do we process, but we've all had different experiences.
Right.
Different formats of trauma.
Right.
Different formats of dysfunction. Different culture, different eras. I saw a thing that was like, I'm going to probably misquote it, but basically the gist was, you're trying to raise kids the way you were raised in a world that doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
And I was like, dang. I mean, like, that was huge. And but with that, though, there are some elements that you can't, like moral integrity and character.
Right. There's
like,
things that you can't.
Things.
But, like, I'm gonna call you out on your age. When you were a kid,
Yeah,
sorry,
it's okay.
When you were a kid, you didn't wear seatbelts in the back of the car. You drove around in the back of pickup trucks.
No. Yeah, rode around the back of pickup.
There was no car seats, things like that.
Well, supposedly there were car seats. I've seen pictures of car seats. I don't remember ever having any. I'm telling you, when we took Caleb home from the hospital, my mother-in-law was like, we had to take him in a car seat. I mean,
Right.
that was the thing. You can't leave unless you're in the car seat. So we had to go get a car seat, right? And he's in the car seat, and she is like, "That is terrible. That's inhumane. Get him out of there. He looks miserable."
Oh man.
You know. But it was like, but actually, turned out to be the one thing that would put him to sleep. Put him in the car seat. Put him in the car. He's out. But all that to say, different, very different. My era, you were able to ride around the back of pickup trucks. Windows are. We got on planes where people were smoking.
Oh yeah.
We were in restaurants where people were smoking. Like, that was just a common thing. I can remember riding in a vehicle with the windows up and someone smoking.
Right.
Like, that just...
You get the cops called on you today.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's bad. I'm trying to think, we were talking, some of us were talking the other day of, like, what's all the things... That's really where this came from, right? Was like all the things that we experienced or got to do that today's culture can't do. Things like
Drinking out of a hose.
drinking out of the hose. Like there's
get
nothing
salmonella now.
nothing like that first bit of water that comes out when it is scorching hot and tastes like
Tastes like
hose.
rubber.
Yeah, and that comes out there, but you're like so thirsty you don't even care and you drink it. But like I would leave my house. I lived in a town, in a city, and I would leave on my bike. I mean, I'm talking like 7. Like I can remember at 5, 6, 7, definitely 8, 9, 10 years old, of getting on my bike, going to a friend's house, going from one end of town to the other.
By yourself.
By ourselves all day long. I don't really remember, like, eating was not a big deal, but there was always one of our buddies, wherever we were at, we went in, and of course, there were microwaves, but no one really had them. But I mean, we would make mac and cheese, we would make hot dogs, like we cooked food.
Right.
We were self-sufficient. We knew how to make stuff. We knew how to do things. And then we would just be gone all day long. I mean, I would ride half hour, or of course it's on a bike, right? So it's slow, but I would ride half hour, 45 minutes from where I lived at one end of the town by the river, all the way to the other end of town, stay at the park pool, or not park, but it was like a city pool, town. I'd stay at the pool for 2 or 3 hours, swimming, buy like ice cream, like I had change that I'd keep in my little pocket.
Back then it would cost like a penny or two.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a quarter, 50 cents or something like that for an ice cream cone. Eat stuff, and then at some point in time, go to a buddy's or go play baseball or go to the park, and then end up at home kind of like for dinner.
Right, but you were gone like all day.
With no questions of like,
where were you?
And no concerns. No,
Yeah.
like, you can't do that, you'll get taken.
Yeah, I remember at like 14 or 15, like riding my bike from like the back roads, my buddy's house, riding our bikes from there to my mom's house. That was probably like 10 miles away. Took us like 2.5 hours to ride.
Which is a good distance.
Yeah, and my mom like freaked out on us when we got to the house, and this is like, 20 years ago,
Right.
which is but. Like even like in the early 2000s, like people started like that was a change. Like we didn't tell anybody we were leaving. We just did it, and but then my mom like freaked out on us. Like, what are you doing? Like you could have got hit, you could have got killed, you could have got taken. Like even at 14.
Yeah. Well, and we didn't think about stuff like, there was no conversation about that. This is what you knew. You always went against traffic, which means if you're walking or on a bike, you're always going towards a car coming at you.
Right.
So if they're going to hit you, you can see it coming at you.
Right.
Like that was the thing. Like the normal stuff of like, you don't cross the road when it's full of traffic, or you figure like
the common sense
it was
things.
Common sense stuff, right? That was all a thing, and it stayed a thing until honestly, really, the change began to happen when technology changed.
Yeah.
Cell phones. When the world got small, you had digital, or not digital, you had cable or satellite TV, where you could see things that were going on around the world. Gosh, what else? I don't know. That began to be the shift, and you started hearing the stories of the things that were going on.
I think because people were so isolated, almost it was like, especially in a small town, like,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
you were isolated from the rest of the world. You didn't hear about, serial killers or people taking kids or anything like that. Like, but then when technology steps in, and now all of a sudden you're hearing all the bad things that are happening in the world, you're like, oh,
Absolutely, 100%.
I don't want that to happen to my kid.
Right. So when you were in school, did you guys did you cruise? Like, did you go in your cars and just cruise around town, or
Oh, we went on late night drives.
late night
sometimes.
drives?
Yeah.
See, in my era, it was huge to because we didn't have cell phones, because we didn't have that we didn't have that digital connection. The only way you had community was to either be at school or get in your car and go cruising. And
Yeah.
I can remember in the afternoons and evenings. Of course, gas was so cheap then, but we would drive around the school, around the thing, just do circle. You would do laps, and then you drive. So you kind of come through, go through the school parking lot. You'd come out, go back down to the main street, up through the main street, and up and around, and then there's kind of I think it's called old school way or something like that, and you come down the hill by the middle school, back into the high school, and that was the loop you did.
Yeah.
And then on Friday nights and Saturday nights, we went to the closest town, Bloomington. We never went to Columbus. Columbus wasn't a cruising town, and you would cruise up and down, a couple different, whether it was Walnut or College or I can't think of the other name of it now, but that was how we had community, and that was how we that's what we did. That's what we lived for. It was reminiscent, it was the teenage way of what we did when we were kids on our bikes, or being able to
grown
go.
up version of hanging out.
It was our way of hanging out in a format where we had community. We were all together, having fun, doing stupid things, and but we weren't worried about getting carjacked. We weren't worried of.
We didn't worry about things
No,
like that.
not at all. Didn't even give it a second thought.
Yeah. I think that's just, like I said, I think it's just the isolation of when you live in a small town and you just don't think about those things. And when technology comes along, I remember getting my first flip phone, and it was my mom was like, all right, it's coming in my room at 9:00 at night.
Right.
And I was like, what? It's a flip phone, Mom.
Yeah.
What am I going to do with it? And she's like, I don't want you up all night calling people or texting people or doing anything. And I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense.
Well, the bigger thing about that is back in those days, that was early days of phones, and you had only so many minutes.
Yeah.
Each month.
I remember those days of having minutes.
Only so many texts.
Only so many text messages.
Exactly.
And having to tell high school, junior high flames that I'm out of text messages.
I'm out of minutes.
I'm out of text messages for the month. I already sent my 500. So 500 text messages this day and age. I send that in 2 days.
Well, I was talking to someone a couple days ago, and we were discussing their youngest child, or one of their children is getting ready to it was their youngest, getting ready to jump in a car and basically do a cross-country road trip. And they were kind of freaking out, and they were kind of and I said, think about that though. When we were kids, we did stuff like that and didn't even give it a thought.
Yeah.
We didn't really think about, do we have enough money? What do we do if we run out of gas? What do we do if we break down?
Yeah.
We just got in the car and took off.
You would just get in the car and go.
Right? And they were trying to talk to him about, you got to think about all these things. And I was just like, that's the world we've come to, where, and it's a good thing. Ultimately it's a good thing. We want to help them by going, here's the lessons we learned. Here's what we did wrong.
Yeah.
And it caused us some pain, or it caused us some trauma. It cost us a lot of money, whatever. So I'm going to tell you this so that you don't repeat it. And I think the reality is there are some things that you just cannot.
You have to learn for yourself.
You have to learn for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember like at 20 something, like jumping in my car and being like, I got to go to Florida to help my buddy move up to Indiana.
Right.
And like drove down, like this is like so dumb, but we did a worship night on Friday. I packed up.
I remember this.
Do you remember it?
I remember this.
I packed up. I helped break down all the stuff. We did worship night Friday night. Helped break down stuff. We packed up my stuff, went to my house, dropped off my stuff. We got in the car and drove through the night to Florida.
Yep.
Got there at like 8 or 9 in the morning. I slept for an hour, woke up, turned around, like helped load my car, and he was driving his car back. Mm-hmm. So I helped load my car, and I helped load his car, and then I left.
Yep. I remember when you did that, and I remember thinking, I didn't think one time like he's an idiot or he's dumb or that's dangerous or silly. I remember doing stuff when I was young, and when I was young, I could handle that. Because at the age I was at the time, I was like, I couldn't do that physically right now.
Yeah, but I couldn't do that physically, and I didn't realize that. So I'm like, it's like, what I wish somebody would have told me, like, take an extra day off of work so you can recover. But like I got to like so Saturday by like, I think it was like 1 or 2 in the morning, my mom calls me, and I'm like 22, and I was like, so I'm like kind of an adult.
Yeah,
I'm
your
an
brain's
adult.
still growing.
I'm an adult, but like I'm still make really dumb decisions at 22. Yeah. And I was like, hey, what's up? And she's like, hey, where are you at? And I was like, I'm in Georgia. She's like, you're on your way back? I was like, yeah, I left. She's like, you drove straight through the night, and how long did you stay down there? How long did you sleep? And I said I slept for an hour, and I loaded up my car, and just started driving back. She's like, it's like 1 in the morning, Nick. Pull over. And I was like, yeah, I'm really tired, but it's okay.
I can make it.
I can make it. And she's like, pull over and get a hotel. And I was like, I don't have a ton of money.
Exactly.
I was like, I don't want to do that. She's like, pull over to a rest stop.
Car.
She's like, pull over to a rest stop. And I was like, nah, I'm not doing that. She's like, get a hotel. I'll pay for it. And I was like, you got yourself a deal, because I was that tired. But I was like, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to get home and like. But that was like the dumb processing of like being young, is like, I can do it.
Right.
Like, right. I can do it. And then I got to the point where I was like, I can't do this.
Well, but that's how we learn.
But that's how we learn.
Right?
Like,
I mean, that's the way you learn on things.
I have done lots of trips like that recently where I've like been like, I shouldn't have done this.
Yes.
But we just did it like a couple weeks ago. And I did this basically the same thing. I did Detroit.
I thought you were spending the night.
I did Detroit, which was 6 hours.
Yeah, I know.
We left at 11. Drove to Detroit. Jazz and my sister went to a concert. I stayed up there. I stayed in the parking lot while they were in the concert for 4.5 hours, because we got such a good parking spot. This is how your values change as you get older.
Yes.
And this is when I first realized that I think I might be getting old. Is this seriously? We got such a good parking spot by the door of like the entrance to the like stadium or whatever, and by the exit, and I was like, this is like perfect spot. I'm not giving this up.
Yeah.
And
that's priorities right
there. This is like I was like. And then I sat there for 4.5 hours, and I was like, I think I'm getting old.
Yeah. So what, could you have called an Uber to come get you so you could leave your car there?
I would not have done it.
No? Just so you could go somewhere and go do something? Get some food?
No, I was just like, honestly, I was just like, whatever. I ended up like just sitting in my car, like with the AC on, listening to books. Yeah. Like audiobooks. But like, I was like, and I was trying to sleep, but I just couldn't do it because like the way where we were sitting, like the sun was like coming right in through, and I was like, yeah, this isn't happening. But they like the concert was like 4.5 hours, and then we ended up like just turning around and driving straight back, and we got home at like 6 in the morning, and I was like, why do I do this to myself?
I know. I thought you were spending the night. I remember the whole conversation. I was like, well, that's good. They're gonna go up there. They'll spend the night. That's gonna be fun. And then you were like, we came back. I was like, I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I was like, and
Oh,
and
dang.
it was a last minute decision to not stay up there.
Yeah.
Because we were gonna stay up there, but then I was just like, dude, I don't want to do it.
I totally get it. But we do things like that. But you have to do some things in order to like kind of learn and go, okay, that was the best idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever. So I want to turn back to where I started, which is the context, right? Conversations without context can turn to chaos. And you're in a moment, you're talking to someone, they're sharing all this. How do you politely correct someone or tell them like, hey, you're gossiping right now, like, or you're trying to turn me to be on your side, or you're angry, you're frustrated, you're upset, whatever. You want me to join your team. I don't know that I really want to be on that team. Like, how do you do that without offending? And this actually goes further, right? Because it's not just about a conversation, but this has to do with like when we see people, like how they live their life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, I think that there's a lot of things to say about like when we see something that's wrong, or we hear something that's wrong, or we've been done wrong.
Yeah, that's big.
Like we feel that we've been done wrong. Even like sometimes it's not even about that we are actually done wrong, but it's that we feel we were done wrong. Mm-hmm. And I think that there's such a need for mercy and grace in those situations from us. Like even when you feel that you've been done wrong, there needs to be a mercy and grace that goes past like your offense.
Yes.
And I was thinking about when we were talking about this subject earlier. I was thinking about the Bible verse in Matthew 18:15. It says, "If your brother sins, go show him his fault in private. And if he listens to you and pays attention to you, you've won your brother back." And I was thinking about like how many times have I gone out of my way where I didn't feel like I was in the wrong, but I've gone out of my way to be like, "Hey, I know that I might have offended you, or I might have said something that I don't want that to be misconstrued, and I don't want that to cause fault between us." Like
That's a hard one. I don't think that happens very often with people.
Just because of being a peacemaker, like wanting to be a peacemaker.
Peacemaker versus peacekeeper.
Yeah, being a peacemaker instead of a peacekeeper.
Right.
Because we can keep peace by we could I guess we could ignore the problems.
That's peacekeeping.
And that's peacekeeping.
Yeah.
But like if you want to actually like keep relationship and you want to keep like I guess at the end of the day, is your pride worth your relationship with people?
I think with a lot of people it is.
And that was
how does I think it's funny like when you say just the initial concept of that, of like reaching out to someone and going, "Hey, can we get coffee sometime? Or could we meet up sometime?"
Yeah.
Like if it's someone you don't meet up with a lot of times versus
it could be awkward.
Yeah, like versus someone who's like you get together all the time, you do stuff together. Like it wouldn't be like anything weird, but like there's this random moment where you're like, "Hey, can we connect sometime? I just want to share something with you."
But again, I think it comes back to is relationship, is peace between you, is community more important than your pride?
Yeah.
And more important than being okay to say, "Hey, I feel like that you've offended me," or being being open. Like that's what I feel like it really comes down to.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being open with, "Hey, I feel offended. I want to tell you why. I want to work it out."
Yeah.
Or, "Hey, I feel that maybe you feel I've offended you. Maybe
Right.
you feel that I've wronged you, and I want to know what I did so that I can make it right."
Sure. Right.
And is it worth being humble, and is it worth humbling yourself for the sake of relationship and community?
Yeah. So let's take that Matthew 18 a little bit further, because what he's really getting at is it's not just about offense. offense can come in that moment, but it's about that you're in sin,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm calling you higher.
Right.
Like I see that you're going opposite of God's word, and you're living contrary to what the promises of God are for you. Like there's something you see in someone's life, and you as a person who loves them, wants the best for them. You go, I'm calling you higher because I'm calling you out,
Right.
and I'm doing it in private, because if I did it in public, one, I would be casting judgment. It's not my place. Two, is I could be talking about it to other people, and then those conversations would be out of context,
And it creates chaos.
and it creates chaos.
And I think not only does it create chaos, but it also causes people to take sides.
Well, 100%.
And then
absolutely.
And then you're being divisional
And that is a sin.
as a whole.
Yes.
Then you're dividing
You're divisive.
communities.
Then it's divisiveness.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And so I think that's why I was asking the question, is like, how in the world I think that's one of the most difficult things to broach, is to go to a friend, go to someone, a believer, a brother or sister in Christ, as they call it, but to go to someone and go, there's sin in your life, and I'm calling you out, and I'm calling you higher. I don't know too many times that has turned out well.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience, from a personal standpoint. My wife calls me out.
And how does that go?
But it's fine. I mean, it hurts, and I
Yeah.
don't like it, and I mean, my first reaction
Is to be defensive.
is to be like, and like justify it, and then I'll be like, she's right, she's totally right,
Yeah.
right. That's a safe. Like, I feel like that moment, that scenario is safe because I'm in covenant with her. And this isn't things that like she's like, I'm going to divorce you over.
Right.
It's stuff that is.
It's like little stuff that like,
Right.
but it's still a sin. But like, I get,
Right.
yeah. But like, you're like, hey, I want you to be, I want you to, I want you to live in community and harmony
Right.
with
Right.
the Lord, and I want you to grow.
Right.
I don't want you to stay where you're at. And
Right.
my wife reacts when my wife and I react so differently. When like I shut down and I'm like reflective, like where my wife will just start crying. And, like you
That's fun.
yeah, and I'm like, I wasn't trying to make you cry. I was just saying this is something I saw, and I wanted you to know that I saw it, and I was like, I don't want you to stay where you're at. I want you to get better.
Exactly.
But that's her first initial reaction is like, oh, I messed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that just comes from her worldview.
Exactly. And, well, her past trauma.
And stuff.
Her filter. And that's what her experiences.
Her experiences.
We all live
like,
that way.
We all live like that.
Right.
Where I'm like I shut down. Like when she'll call me out on something, I'll shut down. And I'll be like, man, is that true?
Yeah.
Is that something like I guess my defensive, like I don't get necessarily defensive. I just get like shut down, and I'm like, I need to figure out if this is true or if I need to be like explain what I'm doing.
Right. Right. I think I love the way you're saying that. And I love that reaction, because I think a lot of times the first initial reaction is to just explain why. This is why I did it, or this is the reasoning behind it for my actions, my words, whatever that looks like, which is typically pretty much human nature.
Right.
I mean, I think it's a beautiful thing that you can say, I try to be like that proactive, not reactive, but proactive, and like looking and going, okay, is this something I need to address?
It took some time over our marriage. Like the first couple of times she called me out on stuff, I was like, no, let me explain why I did it.
Yeah.
But then I started to think, we kind of talked about, when she calls me out.
Right.
And it was like, she's like, when I call you out, I don't need you to explain to me. I need you to take a look at,
I think maybe we change that language from call me out to call me up.
Yeah.
When they call me up, when my wife calls me up, because that's really ultimately what she's doing. She wants the best for me, and she sees a character flaw or an issue or a thing that doesn't reflect the heart of God. It doesn't reflect the character of God. It doesn't reflect the fruits of the Spirit. Like,
Yeah.
and that's really, that's the type of stuff, again, with your spouse.
It feels safer
It's
because you're in
so different than
you're in covenant.
right. Like going up to someone that you're in ministry with, going up to someone you work with, someone. Well, first of all, let's back up. That concept, going up to a believer versus going up to a non-believer,
Yeah.
have two very different outcomes usually.
Oh yeah. Well, do they?
Well,
Actually,
I don't know.
I mean,
I think they do, but now I'm wondering.
They should.
They should.
They should have. If you're calling up
Yep.
a brother or a sister, or a friend that's a believer, and you're calling them up, they should react in a like a reflective way.
Yep.
Like,
Right.
hey, if I have done that, can I process? Or like, it could be like immediate knowledge of like, yeah, I've done that. And
Right.
But I think a lot of times it's let me explain and let me defend.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it should look different, but I think often it doesn't look different.
Or let me get angry or offended.
Yeah.
Which is what I think that when you're calling a non-believer, that's like their initial reaction is like when you call somebody up that's not a believer, then a lot of times they react with anger.
Absolutely.
Or defensiveness.
Yeah.
Like let me defend my position.
As a believer, I feel like most people, if they're defending their position or they're explaining or whatever, if they're in that mindset, it's almost from the concept of like, you have sin too.
Yeah. Like, I know I've wronged, but you wrong too.
Yeah. So
like,
you worry about you and I'll worry about me and everybody will be happy.
Yeah. Like, if you call me out on something, like, and I want to react to defend it, it's because, like, most of the time, like, I hear what you're saying, and I'm like, yeah, that's wrong, but I know I'm your friend too, and I know you got stuff.
I got stuff on you too.
I got stuff on you too,
Yeah.
and I can call you out too.
Yeah.
Call you, but that's when it switches from call you out to call you up.
Exactly.
Like, it's when you're friends and you're calling someone up, it's about them growing. When you're calling someone out, it's about belittling them.
Yeah, that's good. That's true. And where do you think the line is that we're supposed to be doing that all the time, right? I mean, we're supposed to be continually. I was reading, and we were with the youth. We were going through 2 Peter 3, like the first 3 through 15 or something like that, right?
Right.
And it's this whole thing. Like Paul starts out and he's saying all these things. He's like, I'm reminding you of these things you're supposed to be doing, because if you'll do those, basically you won't, I'm paraphrasing a lot, but he's like, you won't struggle with sin because you're so focused on not just doing good works, but you're focused on the reason why you do these things.
Right.
And if you'll focus on these things, they'll lead you into godliness, which will ultimately lead you to be able to not struggle with sin or not struggle with things.
Mm-hmm.
But he says in the passage twice, he said, maybe 3 times, because he said, I'm reminding you. I think he said again later, he's like, I'm reminding you, even though you know these things. Because that's often what we like. I know I'm not supposed to do that. That's
but we do it.
But it's between me and the Lord,
Right.
Like the Lord's working on me, but you have some ownership in this, and so we should read that passage. If you're listening or watching, go to 2 Peter 3, 2 Peter 3. No, 2 Peter 1, 3 through 15, I believe it was. 2 Peter 1, 3 through 15. Read that. And so he says the second time, I'm reminding you even though you know these things. And then a third time he says, I'll continue to remind you even when I'm gone. And I was thinking of that, listening to that, reading that passage and thinking about that whole concept. And I thought, how crazy is it that we're called, according to Matthew, we're supposed to call each other up, Okay, let's not say out first. Secondly is when we're calling each other up. When I'm gone from here, if you're still living, you're going to remember the things that I said to call you up, and it will be like I'm continually reminding you. Right? And so I was, as we were thinking about and talking about just what we were going to talk about today and looking at that, it reminded me of actually to be a good brother and sister in Christ, like to be someone who co-labors with each other, is actually my responsibility is to not accept your stuff, so to speak, and be like, nah, that's not, I'm not judging you. I'm not trying to call you out. I just know that there's more for you, and so I'm calling you up.
Yeah. In one of the verses, it says in 2 Peter 1:12, it says, "Therefore I intend always to remind you of these qualities, though you know them and are established in the truth that you have."
Yeah. Right? I mean, we know truth, and yet we still struggle with it. And I just think this is the scripture that verse 3 starts out with, you have everything you need to do in order to live a godly life, right? I think is what it kind of, I'm paraphrasing a little bit.
In ESV it says, "His divine power has granted us all things that pertain to life and godliness, through the knowledge of Him who has called us to His own glory and excellence."
Yeah.
But I just thought, since you were talking about the reminder, I thought I would go through the three reminders, 12 through 15.
Right.
Where he says, "Therefore I intend to always remind you of these qualities, even though you've already established them in the truth that you have. I think it is right, as long as I am in this body, to stir you up." There's that up.
Yeah.
Stir you up.
Yes. I love that.
"By the way of reminder, since I know that putting off of my body will be soon, as our Lord Christ Jesus made it clear to me, I will make every effort so that after my departure, you may be in all things able to recall these things."
Exactly. That is the mandate to us. Matthew 18 has created a lot of hurt with people because of the way it was done.
Because it's about because people are about calling you out instead of calling you up.
Yeah. And I love, when I was going into 2 Peter, I love putting those two together and going, yeah, I'm supposed to, according to Scripture, I'm actually supposed to do it. But I want to do it from the heart of, I'm calling you up. I'm reminding you of the things you already know.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you already know those things. But I'm going to remind you again. And it's not because I'm judging you. It's not because I don't like you. It's not because I'm mad at you. It literally is because you already know these things, and I'm going to help remind you of that.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, all that to say,
wow,
we are absolutely called to call each other up.
Call each other up, but do it from a place of love.
Absolutely.
And wanting to bring peace into the situation, not wanting to belittle your brother or sister.
Absolutely. 100%. So. All right. With that, we're out.
Have a great day.